Hello. So I thought, because quite a few people that had done the study with me were quite interested to see some overall results and things, that I thought that I would go through the presentation that I had done as part of the final project. So it's split into three parts, the final project. This presentation was one part, which you'll be glad to know that I did very well with. The second part was a literature review, which is basically me looking at all the other research that's currently out there and talking about how it might be relevant for my study and things, which I also did quite well with. And then the third part, which I have just finished and I haven't got the marks back for that yet, was the sort of final dissertation style review of my research, how it's relevant to everybody else and how it might help. But so yeah, a lot of people were quite interested to see kind of my final thoughts after it was all finished and stuff, so I thought that I would sort of go through the presentation that I did, like I say, as part of the final project, and kind of just chat through some of the results and things. This presentation was actually done before I'd finished everything, because that's just when it was due. So I will kind of add bits in as we go along. Also, some of the things in here won't be relevant, but I couldn't really be bothered to change it, so we'll just skip over some things that, like I say, probably aren't going to be relevant for what we're using it for. So yes, my study in general was looking at predatory behaviour motivations in dogs, specifically looking at the difference between scent and movement. And as you all know, that's for my master's degree in animal behaviour and training that I was doing at Bishop Burton. There's a lovely picture of a greyhound. I don't even know if it was a greyhound, actually, looking at the tail, chasing a rabbit. So again, like I say, half of this obviously it's set out for a presentation style for the thing, so some of this isn't relevant. But the first thing, rationale. So why did I choose this topic, and why did I think actually this might be a good thing to research? I became quite interested in prey drive not so long ago, actually. I had a guest lecture from a lady called Tracy McLennan, who specialises in prey drive for pet dogs. I think she has on her website, and I can give details of all these people that I'm going to talk about, by the way, because it might be helpful to people that are struggling with prey drive and things. She has a high prey drive club where basically she'll go through different techniques and things and methods to try and help manage that behaviour in your dog. So she actually did a guest lecture. She did the same. She studied at the same place. She did the same course as me a couple of years prior, and she did a guest lecture for one of my sessions. And I became really interested in just everything that she was talking about, and her research that she did as part of her masters. Professionally, I was coming across a lot of dogs. Owners would come to me and say, oh, you know, he doesn't recall, this, that and the other. But actually, when we look at the dog, it's not that they're ignoring recall, it's that they're hunting. They have seen a bird, they have seen a squirrel, they've seen a rabbit, and they're hunting. So recall at that point is out of the window, basically. They're going down the predatory sequence, and that's it. So it's a little bit of a different area of consideration to just, oh, he won't come back to me. We have to kind of, figure out how can we allow the dog to still perform these behaviours safely and in a way that may motivate them to be more engaging with us. So I don't know if this is going to work because I've never done this before, but this video here on the screen is actually something that I spoke about with Tracy, and again, it's one of the reasons that I kind of based my whole idea of the research. Brain, you all know what I'm like. we'll just watch the video. Hopefully it works. So this is a video of racing greyhounds. So they're on a track, and the white blob on the bottom is the mechanical law that they're chasing. And then if you saw there was a real rabbit that came shooting across the track, and instantly all of the greyhounds changed to chase that other rabbit. And so there was a few things that kind of went through my head when I was watching this. First of all, you know, what was it that kind of made all of those greyhounds switch from chasing the mechanical law onto the real rabbit? And a lot of people will say, oh, you know, they're greyhounds, so obviously it's just because they've seen it. And it very possibly could be because the rabbit was coming a different direction. The mechanical law is going straight down, that's where they're chasing it, and then the other rabbit has come, you know, across their vision, and that may be the motivation, the change in direction, etc., etc. However, there is also research, and I think I might come on to this in a little while, there is also research to say that, you know, when a rabbit is running in fear, they release a scent, and, you know, like the scent of fear, a stress hormone, you know, and the dogs can smell this, and the dogs know, oh, okay, yeah, you're running because you scared me. And it almost, you know, prompts them on a little bit more. And so basically that's why I wanted to kind of try and find out whether, if we had dogs that preferred tracking scent, were they still interested in movement? And if we had dogs that preferred chasing moving things, how interested would they be in tracking scent and you know, stuff like that. So this is where the idea came from, that video, and it's quite interesting. Whoops. What's happening. So yes, so this is a little bit of the current research. So I haven't got my notes with me from when I did this. I did this quite a while ago. So this research is related to what I talked about before, and basically it's talking about how when our dogs are tracking scent, the freshness of the cue and how strong the scent is will also affect their behaviour and things. So a lot of people will say to me that, for example, well, I've seen it personally with a member of the family's dog. If he is tracking scent, but it's quite clearly old scent, you know, the rabbit or whatever, the pheasant, has been there in the past few days, so it's fairly old scent, but it's still there, they can still smell it, and he's tracking that and sort of having a go on that. You can tell because he's quite relaxed, he's kind of just, he's a spaniel, he's quite relaxed, you know, he's just having fun sniffing out this scent. However, if there was to be a real rabbit that has left a scent in the last 5 minutes, he will know that, and he knows the difference, and he becomes faster. He's racing now to track this scent, and his tail's going faster. I mean, a spaniel's tail never stops anyway, let's be honest, but it goes faster. You know, the movements become more erratic as he's desperately trying to find where this scent trail has got to, because he knows he's got a chance of still finding where that rabbit might be. And there were a couple of people that had come to me for the study, and they also mentioned this to me with their dogs. They could quite clearly tell a change in behaviour with their dogs depending on whether it was a live animal that was there right now or whether it was an animal that had just passed through that area in the past few days. And actually it's quite an interesting thing to kind of you know, notice with your dogs as well. It does kind of relate more to the scent side of things though, rather than movement, because with movement they have to actually see the animal to be able to be motivated to go and chase it, whereas with scent, obviously days later they can still be tracking that animal. So it is a little bit different, and I think I did talk about that quite a bit in my final paper as well, where, you know, with movement, it kind of has to be a there and now thing. There has to be something there moving to trigger that predatory behaviour. But there's different levels when we've got a dog that's scent tracking. However, like I say, even the sight hounds do track scent. We don't need to go through that. That's fairly professional. Again, we don't really need to go through that because you were all there and you all saw me do it, so you know what we did. Now we get onto the good stuff though, the analysis. So this, again, like I say, this was before I finished all of you guys coming to me. But you can see that I've got two pie charts. So the first round and the second round. So this is looking at the initial preference. So when you let your dogs loose, when you let your dogs go, which preference did they want to go to first? Was it the centered or the moving? And you can see in round 1, this was heavily the moving, but in round 2, actually it switched and more dogs went to the centered first. The little grey area represent the couple of dogs that didn't actually go and interact with any of the laws. They're still included, bless them. They still gave me data. But yes, the little grey things are those doggies. If we look on the next one, we've got this chart, and this is where we're looking at where did the dogs spend the most of their time. So did they spend more time chasing around the moving law and playing with that one, or did they spend more time sniffing the centered law? I've also split this into initial preference and secondary preference. So again, initial preference, when you first let them loose, which one did they go to? And then secondary preference, did they then go and see the other one? So if they preferred the centered one, did they then go and investigate the moving one or not? So again, split into round 1 and round 2. Again, we did have 3 rounds, but I hadn't actually finished all of that by the time I'd done this presentation. You can see that the initial preference and the time spent there is fairly similar, but you can actually see that overall more of the dogs spent more time with the centered law, whether it was their initial preference or their secondary preference. They spent a lot more time sniffing that one than they did interacting with the moving law, which is really, really interesting because we had a big mix of dogs that came to the study. Some that I would class as sight hounds, some that I would class as scent hounds, and some that were a mix of both, and that, you know, maybe just kind of had their own preference. They didn't really have a breed preference. So that's really interesting to me. Then we go on to looking at the behaviour frequency. I don't know if any of this is interesting to you all, by the way, but this is interesting to me. Which is obviously why I did the course. But again, so this is round 1, split into centered and moving this time. So the blue is the centered and the orange is the moving. And here we're looking at the frequency of behaviours that I saw the dogs perform to each law. So quite sort of predictable. You can see that the first 2, eye and chase, so eye is kind of catching, you know, oh, I've seen that one move, or, you know, oh, I'm looking at the centered one because I feel like I want to go to that one. So quite predictably, you can see that actually the way more dogs would eye the moving law. Again, it's moving, you're going to look at it. And again, more dogs were chasing the moving law. No dogs chase the centered one. Again, quite predictable because we need that movement of something to be able to trigger that chase. The centered one wasn't moving. But interestingly, when we move on to the middle column, the sniff, how many dogs were sniffing the centered and moving law, actually it changes. So more dogs would sniff the moving law than the centered law. But if we think back to the last slide where we were looking at the amount of time they spent with each law, we know that they spend more time sniffing the centered law. So it kind of equals itself out there. And then we've got grabbing and shaking on there as well. It's a bit hard for me to see actually. Grabbing and shaking, which is roughly the same. So the reason that I've split the columns as I have into eye, chase, sniff, grab and shake is that all of these things are relevant to parts of the predatory sequence. So it's a sequence, I can't remember exactly how many is in it, but there's a sequence of behaviours. So from the beginning, we would start with, it's called orientation, but it's basically an eyeing behaviour. We might be scanning the environment, looking around, trying to find basically, something interesting. We've got chase, which is obviously quite clearly them then chasing. We have also got, so you'd have a grab bite and then a kill bite. So a grab bite I've just put as grab, which is basically the dog just grabs whatever to immobilise the animal if it was a real animal. And the kill bite would be them shaking. So they've grabbed it, but now they're shaking it. So if you think about a terrier, a ratting terrier, so they've caught the rat and now they're really aggressively shaking their head. You might see your dog do this. You might see your dog do this with their toys. They grab the toy and then they quite aggressively shake their head from left to right. Basically, they're killing the toy. That's what a kill bite is. And then when you go further down, it's things like dissect and consume. So that's them ripping the animal open and then eating it, which years ago would have been for survival. But obviously our dogs live in houses now where they get fed their food in a bowl and they don't have to do anything for it. So actually it's less common for us to see dogs go any further into the kind of dissect and consume. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Some dogs do have that instinct and they will carry that out given the chance. Another good example for this will be sheep worrying. So if you haven't heard of sheep worrying, it doesn't really sound very serious, sheep worrying, but that is the act of a dog stressing out the sheep. If they're pregnant, they will abort the young, and there's been a lot of dogs that have killed the sheep as well in this manner. They'll just grab onto them and shake and kill and sort of rip them apart and things, and it's horrible. And this is why more needs to be kind of said about prey driving dogs and not letting your dog off the lead around livestock unless they are 100% bomb proof. It's just a bit of common sense. Okay, with the birds, they can fly away, and yeah, you might allow your dog to chase a bird every now and again, but if we're talking about something like sheep, where actually this is a farmer's livelihood, it is an offence as well. And yes, if the farmer catches your dog worrying his sheep, he may shoot the dog. So please just keep your dog on a lead around livestock. Anyway, back to some more kind of cheery things. This is the frequency from the second round. So the behaviours again, you will actually see that on the end of this one we've got rip, which is exactly what I was telling you about. They've caught it, they've killed it, and now they're ripping it open. Basically, if it was a real animal ready to eat. So we did see a few dogs ripping the laws, but we saw it on the centered and the moving. So it does seem that as you get further up the predatory sequence, it doesn't really matter what seemed to have triggered the predatory sequence to happen. The dogs are gonna kind of carry on with those sorts of behaviours. What's on the next slide? Challenges and improvements. So again, I don't know if this is interesting to any of you, but it is to me. One of the challenges that I had was that I had quite a wide range of breeds. So although, for example, I had 3 Springer Spaniels come, I then only had 1 sausage dog, and then I had 1 Labrador, I had 1 Vizsla, and so I can't really make any conclusions based on breed alone. I can't make any breed specific conclusions, which is what I really wanted to do. Originally, before I started the study, I was going to keep it to certain breeds to help myself, and also so that the research was a little bit easier on that kind of side of things, breed specific stuff. But actually it just wasn't going to be possible to get a good number of you wanting to come that had those specific breeds. I would have needed to kind of extend it, you know, a lot more than what we had. So I opened it up to everyone, and actually it still worked out for the best in the end. The familiarisation with the hall as well, so especially on the first session, what I should have done is given your dogs time to sniff around the hall without the laws being there. This was my fault completely because I was so focused on having the hall and everything set up exactly the same and ready for every single dog that came in, so that I was ready and we can just crack straight on. So I skipped that part, and it wasn't until I saw certain behaviours in some of the dogs after that first session I thought, you've done it wrong here. But I'd already started, and this was just something that I could pick up on as, you know, me being silly. And also motivation to participate. So all you guys that are watching this quite clearly did have the motivation to participate because you came, and that's why you're watching it. And I really do thank all of you. However, there were a few people that had come for maybe the first session and then just didn't come back and didn't really tell me. There were a lot of people that inquired about coming, but then couldn't make it or didn't want to after hearing more of the information, and that's completely fine. But actually, as a researcher, this is something that you have to think about. How in the future can I get more people to participate, you know? And you know, how could that then affect my research so that I could have double the number of dogs that I had last time, which should give me better results, or more results at least. Oh, here's little Betty. She's come to say hi. Yeah, that's kind of sort of an overview. So in the final project, in the final paper that I did, the results that I personally had from my study didn't actually bring out any significance at all. So basically, I couldn't actually determine anything from my study. I can only make assumptions, and I can only kind of guide other researchers in the future. However, it was still really interesting, and it's something that I am really interested in. In November, I am going to a 2-day seminar all about prey drive and how actually we can start helping more pet dogs with prey drive. It is something I'm really interested in, but it's not something that I've got extensive knowledge in. Compared to, for example, puppies, you can ask me anything about puppies and I will probably be able to give you the answer. But if you ask me about prey drive, my experience, knowledge and expertise in that area is very limited. So it is an area that I am trying to become better at, which is why I'm doing this 2-day seminar. And then hopefully in the future I will be able to help more pet dogs that have these kinds of problems as well. So that being said, if you have any questions at all about anything, you know, the research that I did, just training in general, your dogs in general, you know, people that I can refer you to that do specialise in prey drive, then please let me know. Feel free to email, message, Facebook me, whatever. I will do my best to help you in any way that I can. And yeah, thank you very much again for coming to the study, and hopefully you found some of this interesting. Because I definitely did. And yes, thank you very much, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me. But if not, maybe I'll see you in the future. Thank you again.